Tech for Good has a very simple proposition that tech can be a force for good. Technology is neither good nor bad, it's what people make of it. And the exciting part of this conversation, as I hope you will see, is a group of CEOs who stand with the power of their institutions behind them to make commitments and have made very concrete commitments to ensuring that technology is indeed a force for good. We spent yesterday, importantly, having a series of conversations, more of that in a moment, but this isn't a one-off. There's been a lot of work been going on over the last year since the last Tech for Good summit that took place the day before Viva Tech. So I think we're at an exciting moment where we're moving from interesting ideas to real commitments, and you heard some of that when Ginny, you were talking this morning. So there's a lot going on. Tech for Good, I think, is now an important part of the Viva Tech landscape, and I think we're going to get into the conversation on what exactly we discussed.
Yes, and before starting, I would just want to say that what happened yesterday regarding the declaration by the head of states and government on the consequences of the Christchurch shooting is part of Tech for Good. It is part of making tech much better for the people. Now, we will start immediately with education. The work stream of education has been led by my friend Ginny Rometty. She has worked tirelessly last year, this year again, and fully committed. So maybe, Ginny, you can say what has been the conclusion of this group, and maybe then we will move to the next one.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. So it's been my pleasure to co-host the education work group with Jean-Laurent Bonnefay, and Antoine is joining me here today in Jean-Laurent's stead as he's at a board meeting. But I'm really pleased at the progress the whole group has made, which includes many different companies. And just a reset, I mean, this is all about closing the digital divide and making this an inclusive era. And think about France, youth unemployment over 20%. And so we set out with 3 initiatives that we have not only created over the last year, we are now midstream in their implementation. And it's part of our commitment. And it is how to be sure that both ends of a spectrum, both youth and then people that need to be retrained, can make a great living in this digital era. So 3 initiatives. The first one is the one that I was able to share for those of you that were here during my keynote. We're bringing Pathway to Technology high schools here into France. We'll be piloting the first 2 with the Ministry of Education, Orange, BNP Paribas, IBM. Think of these as you don't need to have a degree. The paradigm that it is your skills, not just a degree, so we can bring what I would call the underserved and underprivileged, disadvantaged youth into this workforce. And it is a curriculum, it is mentorships, opportunity for a job, and it is think of it as a 5-year program. And so that will be piloting and then soon to be expanded thereafter. That's initiative 1. P-Tech schools in France. We'll hit, even with the first round, we will get a pipeline of 500 kids coming through. The second one, though, is something we've all agreed on, which is called a Declaration of Engagement that all of the companies, and so now we expand to Airbus, to Thales, and others, have all agreed our employees will go do mentoring in schools around the entire country, and it's all about getting young people interested in going into not just humanities and social science, but technology, engineering, math, etc. And so this is to develop the interest. That will be broad scale at hundreds of thousands. And then the third initiative, it's called Online Apprenticeships. So online, people who are in underprivileged areas, as well as in many ways chronically unemployed, will be able to come online for an online apprenticeship, and then all of us companies have agreed to do the hiring from that group. So let me turn over to Antoine, and he'll tell you now what we're going to do to scale these 3 initiatives and what's next on our agenda. Antoine?
Thank you, Ginny. So obviously we first have to onboard more companies, much more companies, because there are a lot of tech jobs waiting everywhere. But we don't have only to onboard more companies, we also have to onboard more people within the companies, because we will not build tech for good companies without tech for good people. So it's very important to have within the companies an effort to train and to stimulate more volunteering, more employees' engagement. It's essential. We also need the government to take new initiatives. We need government to create a real competency framework, and we also need the government to create incentive for public schools to teach the right curriculums. By the way, it's also about opening more our companies to education, to teachers. The teachers deserve to have the last news about the new jobs we are creating, about the new trends, and this can only be reached by a constant dialogue. Finally, what is important is also to develop our initiatives globally, to go further. We can develop this in other countries. And finally, and it's partly our job because I'm a banker, we have to have more private capital to finance startup educations. For the moment, there is not enough private capital financing those startups, and it's essential to go there. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have a reaction on this first work stream?
One reaction is part of the research that we at McKinsey did coming into Tech for Good. The scale of the challenge is enormous. And I think, Ginny, I was struck by your commentary around others joining the PTech and other initiatives. I think it's important that we recognize this is not about one company or one entity. This is going to require a real system change. And technology has a vital part to play in that, given the scale of the task ahead.
Thank you. The following one is on future of work. This group has been led by Dara Khosrowshahi from Uber. As you know, Uber is in the middle of an IPO, and Dara has to go back. And Stéphane Richard, CEO, Chairman and CEO of Orange. And Stéphane will take the task of speaking for both. Stéphane.
Thank you, Maurice. Well, obviously, the work itself is deeply impacted, transformed by this digital age. And, well, there is a lot of questions raised by the future of work. We had around the table a number of participants who gave some very striking examples of what the digital technologies have changed in the traditional one-size-fits-all kind of link between a worker and a company. I would mention, for instance, the Deliveroo. Everyone knows Deliveroo. Founder who reported that today employs in France 20,000 people. They are working an average of 14 hours a week. A large part of them are students at universities. They use a bike, 80% of them use a bike, and they make 13 euros per hour as a wage. So this is typically an example of something that didn't exist a few years ago. And so the future of work is, of course, a very large question for everyone. In this discussion, something appeared very clearly, which is that in this future world, all of us will need more and more to rely on soft skills of people. This has already been said, but skilling and reskilling, by the way, also the workforce, is going to be a major challenge for everyone if we want really to be successful in this new digital environment. And among the skilling challenge, our capacity to better identify, to better measure, and to better value soft skills of people, our workers, but also, of course, the young talents that we will need to attract in our companies will be a key challenge. One initiative in this working session was to recognize, to use and to promote a common platform to try to better understand and measure soft skills. This is a work that has been done by a French NGO called Article 1. I think very smart, very interesting, very relevant way of describing and establishing a common framework regarding soft skills. So all the companies around the table committed to use and to promote this soft skills platform, and more generally speaking, to try to take into account much more than today soft skills in the recruiting processes and in the skilling and reskilling also efforts that we have to make. And finally, two things. The first is that obviously the future of work raises large questions to companies, but also to governments, to societies, like especially the need for protection. And maybe in Europe this is more sensitive than anywhere else in the world. But I think we have also to understand this and to prepare the future. The need for protection, social protection, the future. The need for protection, social protection along the professional life. And the last point, which is that we had someone coming from Africa in this working session who talked about the situation of African youth, emphasizing the fact that today 60% of African people are under the age of 30, and that clearly there is an immense challenge for Africa, but also for us, to find a job, to find skills, training, activity for those millions, hundreds of millions of African youngsters. This is a collective also responsibility for the world.
Thank you, Stéphane. Kevin?
Very briefly, a few points were quite striking in this group. First of all, reskilling is in many ways harder than skilling itself. Secondly, here we are at a technology event where it could be all about hard skills, the technical, the coding. But actually it was a great reminder that technology has a huge role to play in the soft skills. And thirdly, a job is the best way to gain soft skills. A lot of commitments made yesterday about the nature of what will have to change. And I thought, very encouragingly, the group between them signing up to the soft skills framework, to Article 1 and the Job Ready scheme, very practical commitments to ensure people get those skills that will make the difference between being employed or not. Hugely important work.
Thank you. One of the most important issues that we see in the world is the imbalance of men and women, particularly in the executive jobs. And in the tech industry, it is even worse. No one could be better designed and prepared to speak about the gender equality and diversity than Jean-Paul Agon. L'Oréal has been acting very actively since many, many years, and particularly with a great initiative, which is Women in Science, for creating a better balance. Jean-Paul has been partnering with Gillian Tans from Booking.com. Gillian has unfortunately a board meeting, and Jean-Paul will share the views of the group. Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Thank you, Maurice. Good morning, everyone. So we had a very good group yesterday, and we worked, in fact, very well and very quickly. And we, in fact, because we were pretty fast to come to good conclusions and great commitments. So the first commitment that we had taken already 1 year before was a commitment to reach at least 30% women in leadership positions by all companies in 2022. So it can sound low. It's true that some companies, thank you, Maurice, for talking about L'Oréal. At L'Oréal, we are more above 50%, but in the tech industry, it's much more difficult, and we start from a much lower level. So 30% commitment by 2022 for women in leadership. I think it's a very brave commitment, and we have also took the commitment to publish every year the progress that we're going to make on this. The second one, which is a bit related to the first one, is also to reach 30% of women in tech position, because this is another subject. In fact, when you look at the statistics about tech companies or tech departments in many companies, the percentage of women is much lower. It's sometimes between 10 and 15. So to go to 30% also as a commitment by 2022 is also, I think, a very strong commitment. And we're going to do that by many means, including, with a project that we call Tech for Girls, which means to go to schools in order to really motivate and encourage young girls to choose the tech future, which is, I think, a good way. The third one was to also, we thought that it would be also very interesting to try to use tech for diversity and tech for gender equality. And what we're going to do is that we commit also to maximize the usage of all type of software or artificial intelligence that would help companies to promote diversity and inclusion in hiring, training, promotion, career planning, and reducing gender pay gap. I think it's a very important also opportunity. And finally, we want also more globally to bring more diversity in our ecosystem, and there are a few ideas that we had. One is to encourage and promote the creation of new funds and VCs, specially dedicated to finance and invest in gender equality companies. There are many today funds that promote investment in sustainable companies. I think that gender equality companies also is a good opportunity, and also to direct a significant share of our sponsorship investments towards promoting women and diversity. So it was a great group, and very proud of it.
Thank you. Kevin?
A great group, and certainly this is one where the numbers are striking from the report. 2/3 of the jobs most likely to go away because of automation or to be fundamentally reshaped are held by women. So there is a real challenge here. 2/3 of those jobs are held by women, and women are underrepresented to begin with. And then in technology, as you said, Jean-Paul, the reality is women are completely underrepresented in the technology ranks. What does that mean? It means that at the current rate of progress, it will take somewhere between 50 and 100 years before we get anywhere close to parity. That's too long to wait. My daughters are 19 and 17. They'll be retired by the time we get there, so these commitments really do matter.
Thank you. One of the biggest issue, which is following directly gender inequality and diversity, is the digital divide and the economic divide. And for that, there has been a session devoted to economic inclusiveness. And this has been led by Sohn, president of Samsung, and Philippe Val, chairman and CEO of La Poste. Young, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So digital divide is actually a very difficult and very broad subject. So we try to tackle this issue by the team. What are some of the core issues we can address and do something about? And I think we are looking at some of the positive side of the digital transformation. In particular, the country I came from, Korea, and particularly the company I'm from at Samsung, we really got the tremendous benefit of this transition last 20 years. So clearly, we've seen the benefit of it, and there are some lessons that we learned in the process that we shared with the team members, and we felt similar kind of issues that we have to address. And one of them is really about access. Korea was one of the first countries realizing access was critical for transformation of the digital age. And basically they have the fastest internet, most connected internet today. But that's not the case for everybody. Only 64% of the world today has internet access today. So we still have a long way to go to give an equal opportunity for everybody around this issue. The other issue is really about open and secure neutral platform around the internet. I know earlier the Prime Minister Trudeau talks about universal access as well as the importance of the managing the platform for the internet. I think that's a very important subject that came out as one of the subjects. The other thing that I think helped us transform is about transforming education. And I know Jeannie mentioned a lot about really not only educating your own people, which we all do as a part of our job, but how do you address that left behind people, the quarter percentile of low end, to making sure they have an access to education, which is a very difficult subject to do, and having a vocational schools, which, by the way, Samsung also do in France, to support 200 vocational schools to generate 70,000 new technology-savvy folks that are not traditional graduates. So this is an example of a topic that we discussed, really addressing universal access with neutrality and making sure we have an educational program that are not only at work, but also those that are disenfranchised, making sure they have a better opportunities going forward. With that?
Yes, and our third commitment for inclusiveness is about transparency. What does it mean? It means that we CEO and from a big corporate or from startup, we are committing to create appropriate key performances indicators, so-called KPI, to follow the changes on inclusiveness. What does it mean? It does mean that we will, on our corporate reporting, follow information, KPI, on gender, diversity, digital divide inside our own company, and also on people with disabilities. And as you know, today is a Duo Day, which is a specific day for people on disabilities. That is our commitment, to be followed by you, by the public opinion on those KPI, and we will establish a working group together. And I would like to thank all the CEOs who work with us to establish that for next June, and that is a real commitment for us on transparency.
Thank you.
Of course. The point that was made on inclusion in terms of access is so vital to this conversation. There's actually a really exciting opportunity here. One of the great things about this world is people living longer. Life expectancy has gone up. The dark side, life expectancy for the top 25% has gone up twice as fast as it has for those in the bottom 25%. Actually, digital is a way to bridge that gap, because we can give people access to things like heart monitoring, blood pressure, the checks that those of us who can pay for them take for granted. So this is why access really is a great leveler, and could actually be a way of making sure that digital divide actually becomes a way to unify and create better health outcomes for everyone. I think the commitments you made, therefore, are particularly important.
Thank you. Last but not least, as you know, there has been a few years ago a very important commitment made by 189 countries, which is about climate change. And obviously, with the evolution of technology and all the risks which are associated with the use of fossil energy, etc., gas emission, it was important to have a session dedicated to climate change, environment issues. And Antonio Neri, CEO of HPE, and Isabelle Cocher, CEO of ENGIE, have partnered on that work stream, and I leave the floor to them.
Well, thanks, Maurice, and good morning, everyone. I had the pleasure and honor to lead this Tech for Environment Initiative workshop with Isabel. And it was very fascinating to go through that discussion. But this was the first time we got together on this specific initiative. We got together with a common purpose, which is to advance the way we live and work. And in that context, we discussed many things, but we decided to narrow to two specific areas because obviously the topic is very broad. And we decided to narrow the focus on circular economy and what we call the energy transition. We live in a remarkable time because obviously billions of users and billions of devices are already connected, and soon trillions of things will be connected. They are creating an enormous amount of data that has the potential to change the world. Data that not only can unlock economic value, but really improve and address the most acute societal and environmental issues that we live every single day. So we believe technology and innovation is an engine to drive that change. And we as a leader recognize we have to drive a change. There is no way around it. And we have actually the luxury to have Senator and Secretary John Kerry to be with us, reminding us this is what we call in the United States 911 or here in Europe 112. The point is we got to make a change. And as a part of the discussion, in the context of these two initiatives, we discussed three specific critical changes that we have to go and drive together as the leaders, but also with the government. And I would like Isabel now to talk about the three areas that we discussed and what we think are the commitments we need to make this big change. So Isabel?
Thank you, Antonio. That's true that the challenge is absolutely enormous. So we have decided to focus on three priorities. The first one is efficiency. Efficiency, what does it mean? It means that we have decided to optimize our processes to make that we consume less. Less energy, less resources, more generally, for each product we propose to our clients. This is the first priority, in fact. If we have to choose one, it would be this one. Why this is the first priority? Because by definition, it will limit the footprint of our industries, I would say by design, but also because this is the way to make our transition affordable. Because, look, if we save energy, if we save resources, it means that we will provide an additional ability to invest, and to invest to finance our own transformation. So this is really something absolutely critical. We could really say that less is more, less is more. And it will be, of course, leveraged by big data and technology. So first, efficiency. Second, to work on the data, the carbon footprint of the tech itself, the carbon footprint of the data. Because there is a paradox here. Data is absolutely essential for good, for green, tech for good, really. But data also provokes the explosion of energy consumption. Data uses energy because data needs data centers. So at the race we are currently going, we estimate that the energy consumption that is directly related to data consumption will double every 4 years. Double every 4 years. So it means that if we don't do anything, we will probably have plus 60%, 60, of the energy consumption in the world just because big data. So this is critical to work on the carbon footprint of data center in particular. There are solutions. They are, starting. It is essential to push them at scale. So efficiency, big data, carbon footprint. And the third one is, the downstream part of the loop, that is to say, the waste. So we committed to go to zero waste to landfill. In particular, zero e-waste to landfill, but zero waste to landfill. And you can applaud the groups which takes this commitment, yeah. So we have decided to continue to work together to fix for each of our companies, the 12 companies around the table, the date, the horizon of these commitments. To conclude, I just would like to tell you something. We all agreed on one thing. This is a positive change. This is not something we have to undergo. This is a positive change. This is positive for planet, this is positive for people, and that is positive for our companies because it will give us a lot of opportunities of development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking all the members of the Tech for Good sessions. They have been absolutely fantastic. They have been working very hard, and they have put a lot of resources and time behind. And as the President de la République Française is arrived, I would like to thank you all, and we will leave the floor for the President.